085 6060 973.
7:53 is the time. Let's pick up on the conversation. Windfall tax, yes or no? Tony, thank you for hanging on, Tony, in Clacton-on-Sea, by the way, while I was speaking with Sebco. I'm very grateful. Are you a fan of windfall tax on this occasion only? Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Nick. Absolutely right. Yeah, I think that they tax. What frightens me in the society today, that we've had all these deaths with COVID. We've now got this situation where people, I think, are going to either die of starvation. You can forget dying of COVID, but die of starvation. I think in the winter you're going to die of hypothermia. But what concerns me, the profit that the fuel companies are making, like BP. I mean, is that the net operating profit, or is that their gross? Because what I'm interested to know, what is their net operating profit as a percentage of their gross? And the same with the likes of Tesco's, where they're increasing the costs of the food on the shelves, etc. That cost is going to increase.
Yes.
You're going to have shoplifters. They're going to go and nick their food, but they're going to be able to afford to cook it. They can't do both. So, what is Tesco's and Sainsbury's? What's their net operating profit? That's
an interest. I don't have the figures to hand. I hear what you say, and obviously I'm not condoning it, but I wonder whether in some instances people will be increasing what's known as shoplifting. All I know as regards BP, it is their, to answer your question, Tony, it is their net profit, so that's what we're making, and it is of a huge sum. Tony, I can tell you're in a vehicle, safe driving. I have to say farewell because I'm actually joined by a government minister who probably knows more about the possibility of windfall tax than you and I put together, so let's go straight to, thanks Tony, let's go straight to Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Secretary George Eustice, who joins me now. There is pressure growing because of the extraordinary sums of money. I don't need to go through it again, roughly nearly £5 billion, double what was expected. The TUC are saying there should be a windfall tax. Labour's saying there should be a windfall tax. Secretary of State, do you think there should be one? Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the important thing to note is they already pay a higher rate of tax. They pay double the taxes that most companies pay. The headline rate of corporation tax is already about 10% higher for these oil companies. And BP will pay £1 billion in tax, on their revenues from the North Sea. So it's a significant contribution they make. I know that there's always going to be pressure for higher taxes still on them, but they are making a big contribution. They pay more taxes than other companies already. And we do want to ensure that they continue to invest. So gas, North Sea gas and oil is going to be very important in our transition to net zero. Very important that we continue to have our own resources of oil and gas so that we're not dependent on other countries. And the judgment that Rishi Sunak's taken at the moment is that we shouldn't introduce a windfall tax that might discourage that investment.
So you don't like the idea, very briefly. You're not a supporter of it currently.
At the moment, we've taken a view that it's not the right thing to do on the basis we already tax them higher and we don't want to discourage that investment.
All right. In other stories, it is reported that the so-called Rwanda migrant plan is in chaos. We have not been able, as you are aware, we've not been able yet to get anyone over to have their assessment done in Rwanda. Number 10, forced to admit no deportations will take place for months. This is a flop, isn't it?
Well, I don't think it is. This is an important change to our asylum policy because the number of people that we're having, dying at the hands of these terrible people traffickers, risking that dangerous crossing is something we can't ignore. And we actually think that having this new partnership with Rwanda, where people can be removed to Rwanda to have their application processed, is a very important signal and will deter people from trying to make this very dangerous crossing. Now, these things do take time to put in place. So we've announced the measure, we've announced the agreement. There are one or two legal challenges. So obviously we'll have to deal with those in the usual way. And then obviously we need to put in place, the right system to make this work. So yes, it will take a few months, but we are determined to make sure that we can make this work as soon as possible.
Again, in other news, I don't need to tell you about the exhaustive inquiries that have gone on about what might or might take place in parties in number 10. If we go to Durham, it would appear now that the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, actually was joined by senior colleagues, possibly 30 people. Curry, beer, pizza was delivered. He said he couldn't go back to the hotel to get food. The hotel said they were ready and waiting and would have been able to dine. It would seem he's refusing to say whether the Durham police have contacted him since all of this. Do we need to have a full inquiry, Mr Eustice?
Well, look, it's certainly the case that Keir Starmer's got questions to answer. I mean, we've all seen him being highly self-righteous in recent weeks about, allegations around the Prime Minister and the fact that the Prime Minister received that fixed penalty notice for for literally having people around with a cake for his birthday. And these are quite extraordinary claims if they turn out to be true. So I think we definitely need to hear from Keir Starmer. He's got questions to answer. We need to see a full account of what happened, because this story does seem to be quite well sourced to police protection officers.
All right. And finally, yesterday it was claimed that one pensioner has to spend the day travelling around on the bus because she can't afford to heat her home. How proud are you to be a senior member of a government that's brought this about?
Well, look, what I'm proud of is what we've put in place to try to help people through difficult times. So right around the world, we're seeing inflationary pressures driven by the price of gas. We've got inflation running at over 7 or 8%, both in the United States and Europe. And of course, it's climbing here too. But we have put in place hardship funds. There's a £1 billion hardship fund now that local authorities can use to help cases like Elsie. And that's what I hope she will seek support from in future.
OK. Local elections, I don't need to tell you tomorrow, Mr. Eustice. What would success look like for the Conservative Party?
Well, look, the message that we're taking to people is that during difficult times, when there are pressures on household budgets, it's the right time to have a Conservative administration that'll keep your council tax low and give you value for money. And so that is what we're hoping people will do. I've no idea what people will do tomorrow. The last time these elections were contested is obviously in 2018, and a lot's changed since
Indeed.
then.
But what would success look like, Mr. Eustice? What would be a good night for the Tories?
Well, a good night would be to hold as many of our seats as possible, but we are in a difficult environment, so we recognise that there will be some pressures and challenges in some areas. But look, I'm not in a position really to predict the result.
I'm not asking for a prediction, but say you were to lose 700, there'd be a lot of pressure on the Prime Minister then as leader of the party, wouldn't there?
Well, I think whenever you have local elections, it tends to be actually the case that local issues, things like planning and things like council tax and local services, actually is what tends to dominate. And you've got mini battles taking place across the country. We've got councillors out there, making their case. And, I'm not going to get into speculation about what may or may not happen. We're in the final day. We've got councillors and MPs who are out there knocking on doors, getting our message across this final day.
But a bloody nose to the tune of 700 council seats lost, that would be very much a great deal of pressure for Boris Johnson, wouldn't it?
Well, let's wait and see what happens. The Prime Minister's withstood a lot of pressure already with a lot of issues. He's taken us through a very difficult pandemic and performed well there. We're fighting now to sort of deal with some of the repercussions as we come out of that pandemic. He's focused on getting on with these key roles. And that's what we're focused on.
Grateful for your time this morning. Thank you. Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Secretary George Eustice appearing here on LBC, where it's 1 minute after 8. So let's get the latest news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, prices in the shops have risen at their fastest rate in more than 10 years, putting more pressure on the cost of living.